Chris Hipkins claims Māori did not cede sovereignty. Although, funnily enough, he claims whilst they didn't cede sovereignty through the Treaty of Waitangi, they still ceded it at some point or lost it at some point, which is, I think, an interesting point to make. Chris Hipkins was unequivocal. The leader of Labour was asked to clarify his position on Te Ao with Moana, and the issue of Māori sovereignty has been front and centre at the major hui throughout the country following the Koroneihana, the week-long celebration of King Tuheitia, not my king. After questioning from Greens co-leader Chloe Swarbrick, the Prime Minister Christopher Luxon told Parliament he believed Māori ceded sovereignty to the Crown. On Monday night, Hipkins was adamant he believes otherwise. Matthew, enjoying your well-informed insights. Shadowband, and I agree on one thing. Neither he nor I know what he is talking about. Well said. Well said. I don't think any of us know what he's talking about. It's pretty clear that if you follow the various court rulings over time, if you follow all of the academic research, if you follow the treaty settlement process, that the answer to that question is no. So, according to Chris Hipkins, based on the academic research, which we know can always be trusted, can never be questioned, if we follow the treaty settlement process, which as we know is always accurate and can never be questioned, if we follow the various court rulings over time, which as we know can never be questioned, can always be trusted, then the answer is no, Māori did not cede sovereignty by signing Te Tiriti o Waitangi. I find the court rulings the most interesting one, considering they're based on principles that don't actually exist. Principles that courts made up as a result of a Labour Party law passed in 1975, which really should have been amended the moment it was put in. You can't make a law called the Treaty of Waitangi Act and claim there are principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. Because there aren't. There never were, and there weren't for 11 years after it was made, after the Act was made, the Treaty of Waitangi Act. So, how can we sit here and pretend that the treaty principles should have any validity at all, when they didn't exist when the Act claiming they existed was made, and they didn't exist for the 11 years until a case between the Māori Council and, well, the Crown took place, and all of a sudden they cited that piece in the legislation, and the court had to come up, the judge had to come up with some baseline principles which ever since have evolved dramatically and are just malleable according to what the treaty of the Waitangi Tribunal have outlined as the treaty principles and how they work. They are malleable. They're not set in stone. The judge or whoever is the tribunal itself, they pick and choose which is appropriate in any given context, and they are all malleable. They're subject to change depending on basically the political mood of the time. That doesn't sound like something that you want to be underpinning your constitutional arrangements in this country, in my opinion. But that's what they are. They're a malleable nonsense that are used by activists and ideologues to push a narrative and their belief system on what the treaty principles are, or what the Treaty of Waitangi specifically says. It's used to distort what it says and, quite frankly, change history. But that doesn't mean the Crown doesn't have sovereignty now. Isn't that interesting? But it's funny how he doesn't go into talking about how the Crown has sovereignty now. No, that would be too much. It would be too much to explain how the Crown has sovereignty now, but it's enough to rubbish the idea that they obtained it through the only way that you can look at and think that's actually logical. Like, seriously, I have seen a thread from Liam here, everyone's favourite kind of based lawyer. But, yeah, I somewhat disagree with him. And I made, when I was when I had 12-hour suspension last week, I did kind of reply to that, but most people wouldn't have seen it because it was on a non-premium subscribing account and with 500 followers. Lieutenant Governor William Hobson proclaimed British sovereignty over the whole of New Zealand, and British government ratified in October 1840. Exactly, and it was ratified as a result of this Treaty of Waitangi being signed. Both the English text and the Māori text, it doesn't matter which one you want to reference in this case, because they both have the same meanings, albeit using different words. And that is something that people like to misrepresent. They like to say, oh no, they have different words and so they mean two different things. I'm like, I'm sorry, but I can say that the ocean is a mixture of hazel and azure. That doesn't mean I didn't just say the sky or the ocean is blue, because that's what it is. It's like you can say the same thing with dramatically different language. And the people that sit there and pretend that you can't have the same intended meaning with different wording are just gaslighting you. They are talking nonsense. They are trying to convince you that you have no idea what they're talking about and that you should listen to them. So they'll tell you and say, they'll sit there and tell you, because the English text explicitly said sovereignty and the Māori text did not explicitly say sovereignty, they mean two different things. Despite the fact that the Māori text explicitly defines sovereignty, outlining that the Māori give to the Crown, gives to the Queen of England the authority to govern. Now, unless you're unfamiliar with what sovereignty means, you'll know that sovereignty means the authority to govern. So if in the Māori text it states explicitly one has the authority to govern, or one is given the authority to govern, that means they are given the authority, by Māori in this case, to sovereignty. They have the authority to govern and as such are given sovereignty. Same meaning, different language. It's not very hard. But that's the gaslighting of academia and of, well, politicians and of the courts and of every activist and nonsensical ideologue out there. Given Te Tiriti has always been about recognising the unique constitutional arrangement between Rangatira on behalf of iwi and Hapu and William Hobson on behalf of the English Crown, how does Hipkins see that playing out in contemporary times? It has always been about recognising the unique constitutional arrangement between Rangatira and William Hobson. I would probably argue against that as well. That's not what it's about. It's about Māori handing over sovereignty to the Crown and understanding their place in accordance with this new structure. That is what it's about. It is about understanding that they recognise the Crown as the sovereign, recognise the Crown's right to establish governments over all of the lands in accordance with Article 1, understanding that they do still retain some rights and duties with respect to their land ownership and their taonga, but that the Crown has the right of preemption on that land, particularly. And that they have the same rights and duties under law as British subjects. And that is, and those rights and duties are given to them through the process of governance, through the process of having the authority to govern. You see, these rights and duties that the Crown promises cannot be given to them unless the Crown has the authority to give them rights and duties. The Crown has the authority to recognise them as subjects. So that's something that, again, is conveniently ignored in every narrative that you hear. I think the way we exercise our authority to reflect the principles, and that includes Article 2 of the treaty, which recognises tino rangatiratanga, that's been the conversation. That's what we've spent the last 4 or 5 decades working out how to do that. Now, it doesn't encapsulate into nice, neat little sound bites, because there are going to be areas where it's a bit messy as we work our way through what this looks like. But simply saying, let's just stop all of that and start again in a way that writes Māori out of the picture, which is what the Treaty Principles Bill is based on. Oh my goodness. But simply saying, let's just stop all of that and start again in a way that writes Māori out of the picture. Which is, I swear Chris Hipkins can't actually put a good sentence together. It's extremely hard to read this. But simply saying, let's just stop all of that and start again, and in a way that writes Māori out of the picture, which is what the Treaty Principles Bill, based on the reports we've had so far, suggests government want to do. I think it's just the wrong approach. The Treaty Principles Bill is doing everything other than that. It is saying, hey Māori, we actually respect you. We respect your ability to be elected on your own merits. We respect your ability to be treated the same as everyone else in this society without having to be given a hand up, without having to have other laws put in place to try and help you because you're supposedly oppressed and incapable of doing any of these things for yourself. We respect you, we view you as equals, and as such we are going to treat you as equals. It is absolutely nothing about writing Māori out of the picture. This should be telling Māori that they are of value, that they are indeed equals, and that when they have their representation in Parliament, as does everyone else, they will be viewed as equals. Right now, you think about all of these conflicts, the little disagreements at like local government level with Māori wards, with Māori electorates, and how people talk about Māori representatives in those positions. Those Māori representatives are given more flack by the community because they're in Māori wards, because they're in Māori electorates. They are not looked at as equals because they're in Māori wards, because they are in Māori electorates. I don't look at the likes of Tama Pōtaka and view him as any less than the non-Māori candidate in another electorate, because he got into an electorate that anyone can stand for, or that anyone can vote for, most specifically. Because it is worth bearing in mind that technically anyone can stand in a Māori electorate, but only Māori are allowed to vote for them. So these Māori electorates, these Māori wards, do a disservice to Māori and actually create friction and the sense of inequality between Māori and non-Māori. It's a disservice to Māori. And so getting rid of them is good. Supporting everyone being treated the same is a positive step towards making sure that Māori are in the picture, but not in the picture by force or by requirement, but in the picture on merit, and in the picture to an extent where we don't have any qualms as a society of viewing these people as equals, because we are indeed under law treating them as equals. Until such time as we start doing that, there will always be a conflict.